All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Occupy Fantasy Best Ball channel. This went live basically immediately as soon as I pressed live, so we're live. Welcome. I'm Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy, and we're here for Best Ball Draft number 52 on Underdog Fantasy. Best Ball Mania is likely going to fill today, and you've been seeing the same faces on this channel for the past 4 months, basically. So I brought on a new face, Jake the Snake, owner of MMADFS.com. Jake, we normally do a video every Saturday or Friday on the regular Occupy Fantasy channel, and we got a week off in MMA, so shit, let's bring you on here and let's get your takes on some football. What's up, man? How you feeling?
Yeah, man. Appreciate you having me. Feeling good. I've been grinding best ball all week, so I feel like I have a different perspective because I haven't been doing it since the Super Bowl like the rest of you guys. But I definitely got up to speed, crash course in everything going on this week.
Yeah, I mean, this is nice because we've been in our own bubble for the past 4 months. Us being whether it's just the 4 or 5 guys on the Occupy channel or the best ball community, and we get a fresh set of eyes with you, and you've said some very clear takes that we're in alignment on, and it's like, okay, great, I'm glad you can see that immediately. Or some takes where you're just like, I don't know what you guys are thinking, picking some of these guys or taking some of these players in these spots. So it's really nice to see. And while Jake is an MMA analyst, Jake, what, 20 plus years of fantasy football knowledge? So it's not like you've never played fantasy football before.
Dude, like 20, 25 years at this point of fantasy football. I've been playing DraftKings, since the inception and, best ball for a long time, going back to the draft days and before.
Cool. So I mean, plenty of ball knowledge here with Jake. So I'm gonna jump into this draft. Is 99.1% filled. If you're still waiting to get your best ball mania drafts in, you can't wait much longer because it's likely going to fill today. I thought it was gonna fill last night, but I'll jump in here. This is probably gonna be my final best ball mania draft. And again, if you guys can see everything perfectly fine on stream, let us know. If there's any audio issues, also let us know as well. And let's start with the first round, Jake. While we're waiting for this to fill, it's not going to take very long. First round picks, right? CMC all the way down to Garrett Wilson, Puka, Marvin Harrison, etc. It sounds to me like you've been getting a lot of the later picks in the first round, which sucks for you. But just looking at the guys who do have a first round ADP, who do you think are the best picks? And maybe it's just obvious as CMC. And who do you think are the guys you're actively avoiding? You don't think they're worthy of first round ADP?
I mean, the main guy I'm avoiding is Garrett Wilson. I feel like the Jets have a strong probability of just being fraudulent. Aaron Rodgers could be completely walked up. He could get re-injured. I mean, it feels like we're doing the exact same thing that everyone was doing last year with the Jets, just being like, oh, they're going to be good. They're going to be good. And yeah, Rodgers got injured, but who's to say they were going to be good if he didn't get injured? And I'm still on the mindset that their offense is probably going to struggle. So I think he's a little bit overrated. I mean, most of the other guys I'm pretty comfortable taking.
Okay, I think that's fair. And because you've all like exclusively gotten back half of the first round draft slots in your drafts, that has rubbed off on me here as I have the 12th pick in this draft. So we'll avoid Garrett Wilson for your sake, and we'll see who falls to us here. Marvin Harrison, rookie ADP 112, which is kind of crazy to see from a rookie. I know you started watching some rookie tape very recently. You think he's legit, right? And who are some other rookies that you're really high on?
Yeah, no, I was definitely grinding some tape last night. I do think that he's like head and shoulders ahead of most of these guys. And there's some other interesting plays. I like some of the late guys, man. Honestly, I think like guys like Corley and Leggett, Mitchell, even like guys like Franklin. I really like McMillan, man. I was watching him, and this guy looks legit. Like he's going to be the number 3 wide receiver off the bat. And I feel like if Evans or Godwin gets hurt, like this guy could definitely have the tournament winning upside. I think he looked really good.
I totally agree. McMillan is my highest exposed wide receiver to this point. I agree with everything you just said there. And you get some Amon-Ra St. Brown vibes, right? Where it's like a little bit of a later draft pick. Rookie year didn't take off until the second half of the year, but really won leagues and won tournaments that year. And I really do get those vibes from Jalen McMillan. So glad to hear you're on board as well. And we start to see some more casual players into the mix here. I don't know if we'll get full casual action in Best Ball Mania because it's filling on Saturday. I was hoping next week. And I think in the contests that open or close next week before the game starts, we'll get some more casual action. Unfortunately, Jake, we won't have an option here because Garrett Wilson was taken 1-7 overall above Amon-Ra and above guys like Bijan Robinson. So
Sorry, I just had some MMA tape in the background that popped up that I had to turn off. I was like, "Where is this sound coming from?"
Still grinding.
It was oh, dude, it was Chris Padilla like regional tape. I had to go back on. I was like, "Which window is this coming from?" So sorry about that.
All
I'm
good.
good now.
You're good. Marvin Harrison has fallen to us with the theme of the first 5 minutes of the show. I will take Marvin Harrison. I'm a little light on him, my exposures, anyways. Let's see here. You have a preference here? So Gibbs, JT, London, Debo, Nico, or even further down the. I know you're a big Achane guy too, and I kind of want to take Achane here. I know you said you've been taking him a lot on the way back. We both agree he's a potential league winner with that efficiency.
Yeah, I don't mind. I don't mind, reaching a little bit on HN and just grabbing him here. I really think he's got number one running back potential, and I feel like it gets a little murky with some of these receivers. Like they all should be good, but I feel like HN is the guy that I really feel confident in.
Yeah, I feel you. And the nice thing about, and I don't know how much you've listened to our shows or just thought about Best Ball Mania strategy in general. When you look at this contest and you see that there are 666,000 entries, and we're trying to get some unique combos because all these guys in the first 17, 16 rounds are going to be drafted. They're going to be on rosters. The way we can get
Right.
different is by making different combinations. And if we're taking Marvin Harrison at the 12th spot, but Achane doesn't go until the mid or second half of the second round, very few people are pairing up Harrison with Achane. And if Harrison and Achane are the guys you need, we'll be one of the few rosters that actually has this combination.
I love it, man. I think that makes a lot of sense. Like, yeah, if you just take the best value every time, you're gonna not have very unique combinations.
Right, and think about it too, right? Like the way you just said, like all these guys should be good, but like if you look at season-long projections, how many points are we really sacrificing taking Achane over Drake London or Debo or Nico Collins, right? And maybe it's a few points here and there. That's not enough to get us off a different combination, or not enough for us to even like. Just because the median outcome is a few points apart does not mean the ceiling outcomes are a few points apart.
Absolutely, man.
So second round, any guys you're avoiding here? What do you think about Saquon moving over to the Eagles? You're an NFC East fan. Saquon obviously with the Giants for a long time, and now moving over to Philly. What are your thoughts on him in that situation?
I mean, he should be good. I mean, obviously, you worry about Hurts vulturing the touchdowns. They've got a ton of good wide receivers, so they're not necessarily going to have to feed him a ton. I like him. I'm not like going out of my way to get him, but I mean, I think he's solid.
I mean, so for you, it's Achane over any of these second round running backs every time, right? Barkley, Kyron, or JT.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool, easy enough, easy enough there. All right, guys. So this draft will take about 30 minutes or so. I'm gonna go through 18 rounds here. I'm trying to even up some exposures. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do it. We get the 1 hour clock now on the fast drafts. I have about 10 or 15 of those going. Some more drafts will drop here after Best Ball Mania concludes. I think as a staff, we're going to do a higher dollar one on Monday, it sounds like. So be on the lookout for that. Make sure you subscribe to the channel here on YouTube. And let's see here. So, Jake, you have a lot of experience here with the the back half of the first round picks. So, are you mostly ended up on the same guys in the first few rounds, or are you trying to spread it out a little bit?
I would say I have pretty condensed exposure at this point. I think at times I'm trying to, like in my mind, trying to spread it out, and then when it comes down to it, and I'm on the clock. I'm just not clicking the guys I like less very much.
Right.
But I mean, I'm also not doing 1,000 drafts,
Right.
so I think it all depends on how many you're doing.
Yeah, and that's a strategy we've talked about here on the past couple of months on these shows is if you're building 1,500 teams like Chuck is, I don't know how you do it. I know you have zero social life, I assume. Sorry, Chuck, but yes, you can spread out a little more than try to build a little more optimally. Whereas if you're like you or some of our other or a lot of our viewers or members who only have time to draft 5, 10, maybe you get up to 50. Even then, you have to take some stands because you can't cover every combination with those few amount of drafts. So that really makes a ton of sense. We had Ken on the show yesterday. He was on here with Chuck. Let me get my camera here going. Yeah, so Ken was on the show, and he he said, "Man, this third, fourth, fifth round range is pretty gross." That was my initial thought in May, and we've kind of talked about that on these shows for the past few months. Do you agree? Are you a little different and think that I like a lot of these guys third, fourth, fifth round, or are you similar to us and thinking that I don't think many of these guys are worthy of this range, but someone has to be drafted here? What are your thoughts when you see round 3 through 5?
I mean, I don't really mind it, man. I feel like you can find edges anywhere, and if you really hate it, I mean, go back one round and just get all of your guys like slightly early
Mm.
if you absolutely hate that range. But I don't know. I don't really mind it, man. I can find guys anywhere. I feel like maybe that's naive, but I can talk myself into plays just about anywhere.
And if you read Jake's MMA content, we certainly know that is the case. Now, what about elite tight ends, elite quarterbacks? They seem to me like easier clicks here than some of the receivers and running backs in this range. Are you taking much of, well, there's Josh Allen, Hurts, Mahomes, Lamar, or Laporta, Kelsey, McBride, Andrews? Are you taking those guys heavily, or how have you been handling the elite one-offs at those positions?
Yeah, I don't mind having Allen. I haven't been getting much Mahomes or Hurts. I have zero Lamar or Andrews. I'm just not. I mean, I think Baltimore is going to be good. I just am not like for where they're going. I just can't like click on those names. Like I would rather have the quarterbacks and the tight ends around them if I'm going to take a high end quarterback or tight end. And there's also so much value late in drafts at quarterback and tight end that
Yeah.
I don't mind waiting. So I'm not going to go out of my way to get Lamar or Andrews, who is just habitually injured. I would almost rather have likely super late and just on Andrews staying hurt.
Likely is my highest exposed tight end here in all of these drafts I've been doing, and it's for the and even if Andrew stays healthy, right? That's not even the point. The point is very rarely do you have a backup tight end who's actually going to play some snaps too, right? It's not like he's going to be a zero every
Right.
week that Andrews is healthy, but it's the rare case where if you draft likely and Andrews does get hurt, you have a top 10 tight end for the cost of around 15, 16, 17, 18 pick, which you cannot say about any other tight end in that range. Yes, his floor is a little bit lower each week than some of those other guys. But honestly, how much lower can it be than someone like Greg Dulcich or Colby Parkinson or these other guys that are being drafted, right? It's not that much lower, but his upside is tremendous.
Yeah, man, you're talking about like a point or two difference on the floor and just insane upside where he could be a top five tight end. I
Yeah.
mean, if Andrews goes down, I mean, it's absolutely insane his ceiling. That's what you're looking for in these large tournaments is ceiling.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy. If you don't take an elite tight end, and even if you do sometimes, but if you don't, it's like likely is the easiest click for me if you're building two, three tight ends towards the back half of the draft. I actually went with Mahomes and Kelsey here. I'm a little light on both of those guys, so I figured I'd stack them up here. The one issue with this team so far, Jake, is if you've read anything or if you've been doing drafts, you know that receivers fly off the board. So just one receiver through 4 rounds is not ideal. I'll try to load up here in the next couple of rounds. But have you found yourself being in line with most of your draft rooms at receiver and taking a bunch early? Have you found yourself falling behind? How have you felt about, because this has been a big conversation about best ball this year, that maybe it's overcorrected a little bit with how many receivers are being taken early, but what are your thoughts there?
I haven't intentionally been going running back or wide receiver heavy. I've just been kind of going with what how the boards are going, but I've definitely had a lot of zero RB builds. But then I've had other times where if I can get a good running back in the first round, run it back with H-Chan, all of a sudden you're going running back heavy, especially if you can get like Josh Jacobs or something in like rounds 3 or 4. So it really depends on what's falling to me. I've done like multiple different approaches. I've gone super wide receiver heavy at times. I don't think it's terrible, man. I think we have plenty of value to grab later on. I mean, you're pretty balanced right now, especially after getting the Mahomes Kelsey stack. Now you can just kind of hammer running back and receiver for a while, and then if you want to tack on a late quarterback and a late end, you can.
Yeah, and that is one benefit here of taking early elite tight end and or elite quarterback is you don't have to spend three roster spots at the position. You can load up on
Yeah,
running back,
right.
and it really does help your depth from that perspective. And so you mentioned some quarterbacks late that you like. We'll get to that here in a little bit, but an obvious target that I'm looking at here now to pair it with Mahomes is Xavier Worthy at this 5-6 turn, who's been going around that range, especially once Hollywood got hurt. Worthy's a guy that you do like based on your tape. I think you said you liked him as a little bit of a Tyreek light situation.
Yeah, I mean, like literally and figuratively, the guy's like 165 pounds. So, I mean, you always worry about the injury risk or just, getting off press coverage when you're that small. I mean, that's so small to be an NFL receiver, but the guy's an absolute burner. And you know that Kansas City is going to find ways to use him right. Like, if he got drafted by a bad team, the guy would be out of the league in 2 years. But I think Kansas City is going to absolutely do the right thing with him, get him in space, and he's gonna get some long touchdowns for sure. So you gotta love him in best ball.
Yeah, I totally agree. I agree with all those points. And receivers are actually flying off the board right now, which does not make me feel great about getting some receivers here, or even Xavier falling to me here at the 5-6 turn. But other rookie receivers in this range, Roma Dunze, obviously high pedigree first round pick in a crowded receiver room with that quarterback, the rookie quarterback, number 1 overall pick. But then Brian Thomas, who's been a mention of our staff chat seemingly forever, and there goes Xavier Worthy. So thank you, Fresco, for taking him a few spots before me. But Odunze, Brian Thomas, guys in this range, even Lad McConkey, who was around later. Any concrete thoughts on those guys? Are you higher or lower than the field on any of those three?
I'm probably a little lower on McConkey. I wish he went later because I like the idea of doing a late Chargers stack if you can make it work. But some of the guys are going kind of earlier than I would have hoped for that strategy. I think Odunze is, I feel like Odunze and Brian are kind of in a similar position where like they could be good, they could get a bunch of touchdowns, they could potentially bust because they're in crowded wide receiver rooms right now. So they're definitely both like high upside but unknown floors. But the team spent a lot of draft capital on them, so you would hope that they would pan out. But you never know, man. I feel like the rookie wide receivers are always going to be pretty volatile just because we don't fully know what to expect from them.
Right, and obviously it's every situation is different. But you think of like Jackson Smith and Jigba for Seattle last year was kind of going in this range. Definitely disappointed by most standards. Not saying either of these guys are going to go down JSN's path, and I like JSN as a pick this year as well. But again, you see the downside of the rookies here if they're in crowded situations. They're not necessarily going to overtake the veterans right from day one. And ideally, we'd like them to take over before best ball playoff time, but even that might not be the case, Jake.
Yeah, for sure, man. So like if they drop later, I don't mind taking them, but I don't really want to reach on them.
Yeah, that's fair. So would you take Keenan Allen over Roma Dunze, just straight up?
Yeah, the reports on Keenan Allen are so bad. Like all the Fat Allen talk, and he's getting older, and he kind of fell off late last season. He had such a good start to last season that it's hard not to love him. This is a tricky spot where sometimes I end up taking like Joe Mixon or David Montgomery just to avoid some of these receivers. But I know you're super light at receiver, so I totally get just taking a shot on one of these guys. And I would say I'd probably go Dunze slightly over Keenan Allen. Brian Thomas is definitely in the conversation there as well.
Cool.
And Chris Godwin too.
So I went at Dunze, and again, for those who are just watching, I'm about 10 seconds ahead of Jake seeing it on screen. And I don't have a ton of Joe Mixon, and I definitely don't like taking a second running back this early when I only have 2 receivers. But I'm going to take Mixon here because he has the week 16 correlation with Patrick Mahomes stacks. So we'll get that for the playoff correlation. Now I'm just going to have to hammer receiver. No choice but to get receivers in the next few rounds.
Right.
However, Jake, round 7 through 10, not the best receiver landscape by any means.
Yeah, it gets a little thin at times where then I start to look at some of the running backs, or if I don't have tight end or quarterback, I might be considering some of those options there. But I really like Javonte Williams and Pollard in those rounds. I've been taking a ton of them, so I haven't been going super wide receiver heavy at that point.
So many of my builds look that way. I mean, just hammering running backs from this range. So let's just talk through some of these guys. Give me, we won't play good fighter, bad fighter, good matchup, bad matchup like we do on the MMA shows. But just maybe like it could be a word or a sentence about how you feel about these backfields and if you're taking them or not in this range. We can start as early as the Pittsburgh situation. So Najee Harris, Jalen Warren.
Dude, you gotta like Najee Harris with Arthur Smith coming over. Like Atlanta had like the lowest PROE last year, and Pittsburgh was like the 4th lowest, and now we're taking Arthur Smith from Atlanta going into Pittsburgh. I think he's absolutely gonna love Najee Harris. Jalen Warren's already banged up with the hamstring injury right now. They brought in Cordero Patterson. Like maybe he steals some touches, especially if Warren is hurt at some point. But I think Najee Harris gets so much work here, and in half point PPR, obviously is more valuable than full point PPR.
I like that too. Let's see. I'm trying to think of just like these ambiguous backfields here because we have guys like Mostert who's going, DeAndre Swift. They kind of, they're not really dealing with anyone else in this range. Just really quickly, Zamir White. I think as a staff and maybe as an industry, we've been down on him. Do you think he's in a void, not much pass catching upside in this spot? Have you taken much Zamir White?
I was taking some early, and then I was watching the Occupy streams, and you guys were pretty low on him. It kind of deferred. So I was like, all right, well, I guess he's not that great. It's just an opportunity thing. Like they're going to run a ton. He's the lead back. They have Madison behind him now, who sucked last year. So It's purely an opportunity. I don't have like a ton of confidence in Zamir White's ability, but I mean the opportunity should be there at least early on. I mean we'll see. It's definitely a gamble. He's a guy that could very easily bust hard.
Yeah, I mean, you could see it one way or the other. Like we saw Josh Jacobs in this range 2 years ago, I think it was, and he just absolutely blew it out of the water as his ADP continued to fall throughout the offseason. We've also seen many guys. You could just look at Alexander Madison, for example, last year failing in this kind of similar spot where expected to get volume, but not necessarily that talented. You talked about Pollard, and you didn't mention Tajay Spears, but I'm extremely high on the Titans offense as a whole. This year it's obviously going to hinge on Will Levis, but you got to like Tony Pollard. We saw him in the last preseason game get a ton of work with the ones, and then Tajay Spears catches passes too. Are you taking Tajay Spears much, or are you mostly just focusing on Pollard?
Man, I've been taking a stand there, and I've been taking Pollard. I could definitely get burned on that. I was high on Pollard last year, and he was coming off the injury, and that was obviously a mistake. I mean, he could never score a touchdown last year, but I'm doubling down. I still, I'm taking the talent here. I think Tajay Spears was catching a lot of passes last year, right, with
Yep.
Derrick Henry there. But is he going to catch as many passes with Pollard in the backfield now?
That's true. That is a possibility. And again, I've been taking a bunch of both, but seeing how they use Pollard in preseason week 3 as their kind of test run, and Spears basically didn't play any with the starters, that has certainly encouraged me to draft Pollard a little more here in the last week or so. What about your boys from Washington, Brian Robinson, Antonio Gibson, no longer there in New England, as we've had many discussions about those two. But now Austin Eckler comes in, and Robinson is going pretty consistently higher. I would say almost 2 rounds higher than Eckler. Do you feel that's fair? Do you like one more than the other?
Man, I'm kind of low on Washington this year. Their offensive line is so terrible, and I think to some extent Robinson and Eckler are going to cannibalize each other. With Robinson getting the early work and probably a lot of goal line work, and Eckler getting the passing downs. Like they're both going to have decent floors, but I'm not sure either one's really going to have a huge ceiling. So if they drop really far down, I'll take them. But it's literally like the worst offensive line in football, and they didn't really do anything to address it. So I'm not. I'm lower than the field on the running backs, on on the quarterback, on probably even, probably the whole team in general, man. I just feel like offensive line is going to be a big problem, and people are kind of ignoring that right now.
So not much Jaden Daniels either then.
I had some early, and then just the more I thought about it, like the only confident stack is McLaurin. And then I don't know, like you can get the other wide receivers for free late, but you have to guess right, especially now with Noah Brown in the mix. So no one really knows. I mean, people are projecting Noah Brown's going to be number 2. I mean, who knows, man? They have Luke McCaffrey, they have De'Ami Brown, they have Zacharias. Who knows exactly how that's going to shake out, or if there's going to be enough food to feed everyone. There's a lot of players that could be good, but I don't think they're all going to be good. And with the bad offensive line, I think we're going to see the offense struggle a lot.
Yeah, and I mean,
I hope I'm wrong.
yeah, as a Commanders fan, I'm sure you do hope you're wrong. And a lot of people are just expecting Noah Brown to jump into that number 2 role, but I mean, I thought his roster spot was completely secure as a number 4 in Houston, but they just let him go, and maybe that's an indication that Mechie has taken that next step and they really like him there. But Noah Brown didn't play the entire preseason; was dealing with injuries, and so if he is truly injured and not what he showed last year, I mean, there's no guarantee he even is on the roster in a few weeks, right? Obviously, he passed the physical and signed with the team, but if Houston was willing to let him go that easily, I was kind of shocked by that. So just from that thing, I'm not necessarily sure that he's the guy. Like it could very easily be De'Ami Brown or the rookie Luke McCaffrey.
Yeah, man. I mean, you even have Zach Ertz and Sanat there. So I mean, you have a lot of guys, and we don't really know how the offense is going to shake out right now. So it's super risky taking any of them because basically any of these guys could either get cut or benched or hurt, or I mean, Ertz is super old. Who knows what he has left? So it's so same for Eckler. It's so risky taking any of them. They could have good upside, but the floor just isn't really there for any of them outside of McLaurin. And Jaden Daniels obviously is going to be decent as long as he can stay healthy. But I worry about him taking a bunch of sacks.
Yeah, it's so funny. I think it was the second preseason week where he got out of the pocket and scrambled, and you see like every possible person on the sideline. It was like a video game where they all did the same animation, like trying to tell him to slide. Doesn't slide, gets hit, and he pops up immediately, like runs to Dan Quinn's like, I'm sorry. It's like, man, you got there's a different league, buddy. You got to learn to slide or get out of bounds.
Yeah, man. We'll see, man. It just seems like the RG3 situation all over
It has scarred a lot of Commanders and Washington fans, certainly. So, but as I said, Jake, new ownership, new aura. But as my fiance said, it is still the same stadium. So, not
again.
everything is different.
Yeah, man. Same
Uh,
stadium. You can change the name, you can paint the walls, but it's the same team.
all right, so we are through 9 rounds here. I only have 3 receivers, which is certainly not ideal. I'm gonna start hammering some guys here in the next few rounds. And I have 2 rookies and DeAndre Hopkins, who's dealing with a knee injury. So super impressive wide receiver room so far. I got 2 of the 3 playoff week correlations with Pittsburgh and Houston. Did take Najee Harris, who I do like as well. So I'm glad you're on board there, Jake. So some receivers in this range that are coming up that I'm eyeing. The Green Bay receivers, so Romeo Dobbs, Dontavian Wicks. I really like Khalil Shakir. I would love to see him be the wide receiver 1 this year. I think it's possible. I'm hoping he falls to me here. Rashid Shaheed, Tyler Lockett. Any of these guys stand out to you as guys that you're eyeing or taking some of?
Dude, I'm all in on Shakir whenever I can get him here. That's one of my favorite picks in the draft.
You and me both. All right, I'm love to hear that. So there's a roughly 1% chance he lasts the next 3 picks then because we've said his name too many times out loud. We'll see if Olsen or Strawny, the 2 guys ahead of me, are watching the show and take Shakir and snipe us. If not, I'll be on Dontavian Wicks. And I love Rashid Shaheed too, especially in best ball. And I need some spike weeks from receivers, so I don't mind that as well. So we'll see here. Who else is I'm so focused on receivers. I don't think other people are, but tons of quarterbacks still falling. Joe Burrow, Dak Prescott, Caleb Williams, Trevor Lawrence. Are you taking any of those guys? Obviously, you're not. It doesn't sound like you're in on Jaden Daniels, but are you in on Caleb Williams?
Yeah, man. I like Caleb, especially that you have a Doomsday. I really like the stack here. I would go Shakir, and if you can't get him, I would consider Caleb. I mean, you already have Mahomes, so you don't have to get him. If you didn't have a quarterback here, I would strongly be looking at Caleb.
Yeah, and
They took Shakir, of course, naturally, right?
dude, we said it too many times. All right, I'm gonna take Wicks and Shaheed. I like both of these guys. Wicks is
Yeah.
kind of the wide receiver 2B, 3B, can be wide receiver 1 depending on injuries. Shaheed, big play guy. So I think he fits. These 2 guys fit this room really well. Um, so we'll see. Wicks is going to have a floor basically every week. Shaheed can pop off, and that helps us with 2 rookie receivers and DeAndre Hopkins, who might not play week 1. So, are you thinking about player profiles at all, or the role these players fit in with their team compared to the rest of your team? So, like, let's just say you have like a bunch of committee running backs. Are you looking to take more committee running backs late, or maybe take a shot on 1 or 2 guys who will super benefit from an injury? Are you thinking about that at all, or are you just taking the guys that you're taking?
No, definitely. I'm trying to mix in like high upside with a decent floor. So, some of the guys like likely or some of the other people that could have a huge ceiling with one injury. Obviously, he still has a floor too, but you don't want to have only high upside guys and you don't want to have all safe plays. I think you definitely need to have a combination of the two.
Totally agree. Totally agree. I think just Wicks and Shaheed is a great combination to highlight that two very different types of plays going back to back in the draft. And it really depends on what you're trying to do with your room and just mixing and matching those types of guys. So right now I have 1 quarterback, 3 running backs, 5 receivers, 1 tight end, which generally is around how my builds look in this range. We got there by a much different path than usual. So we'll see how this plays out. Um, Second half of the draft, round 10 and beyond, any guys that you're taking a ton of that you really like, that you're just focusing in on? These are the guys that I'm auto clicking once I get in the back half of the draft.
I mean, I always have a soft spot for Gabe Davis if he's still there late, just based on his upside, especially if you have some decent floor guys around him. Obviously, he's in a different spot this year. We'll see if he still gets as many, bombs thrown to him, but I still like him. Once Jalen McMillan, once it comes time to get him, like I'm definitely hopping on that. I don't think Jerome Ford's terrible. Like we have no idea when Nick Chubb is coming back as he gets taken.
Of course.
um, Mike Williams, like it's a little scary, older guy coming off the injury, but I mean he's basically like I feel like the same as Gabe Davis almost here, which are right behind Shaheed and just deep ball guys that can get you some touchdowns. I don't mind McLaughlin. I think he's going to catch a lot of balls. Um,
Big fan.
I said I like Javante Williams, so like if you can't get Javante, then I think McLaughlin's definitely interesting. He should get a ton of catches.
Yeah, I mean, all kinds of stats out there about how many passes are caught by Sean Payton running backs just year after year after year after year. And even in preseason DFS, we
Right.
saw it where some of the notes we had in our preseason daily plugs was like, yep, we're not sure who to play out of Estime, Watson, or Beatty, but Denver running backs have like 16 catches through 2 preseason games, so they're all going to probably catch some passes. So even through preseason, that trend translates. And so I agree with you. Like even if Javante's the lead guy, even if Estime shows more than his ADP projects, McLaughlin's a guy that's going to catch a lot of passes. We saw it last year too. So even if he's not, he's a perfect type of back and offers some floor, maybe a little bit of ceiling if one of the other guys get hurt, but a guy that should contribute most weeks on your rosters.
Definitely, man. Like the floor is there, and if Javante gets hurt, the ceiling is there. I wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts? Obviously, everyone that you listen to right now is being like, if you can get Jordan Mason and Blake Corum, you should get them. When you hear every single person in the industry talking about these are the lottery tickets to take, how often do those guys actually
I know too many, especially Jordan Mason, right? I mean, firsthand, Jake, the fuckery of Kyle Shanahan. Like,
hit? Yeah.
is it definitely Jordan Mason, number two?
No.
They drafted Garindo. They got some other guy. Like, is it definitely Jordan Mason? Yeah, we want to believe it, and everything points to it. And yes, he looks good. But come on, like we know Shanahan too well here.
Dude, Shanahan will wait until McCaffrey gets hurt and then pick up some dude off the street and make him the starter.
Yeah, here comes Royce Freeman off the street, 20 carries.
Right.
Yeah.
Brings
uh,
back Matt Breida or something.
yeah, exactly. So I think that is a situation where, especially now, Mason is being drafted. Let me pull up. Let me his ADP now,
Right, he's
161.
going early.
Yeah, but he's going even earlier than what his ADP on Underdog says. Whereas Blake Corman's
Right.
kind of stayed around the same. I Blake Corman's one of my highest drafted running backs, and again, these are situations where the guy is going to be 100% drafted, and his really hasn't changed that much. Round 10 through 12, depending on the drafts that you're in, and he just fits if you go zero RB or you need you got some floor around your other positions. You could take a shot on an upside running back. Core makes too much sense. Whereas Mason could literally be a zero all year. I see situations where I think most situations Corum or most ways that this season plays out, Corum is not a zero every single week of the season.
That's
While,
true.
while I think they offer the same upside.
No, that's a good point. You definitely will get a floor from Corum. He's going to be splitting work, whereas obviously CMC is going to dominate work in San Francisco.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's see here. All right, so 1-3-5-1. I'm probably drafting another running. I need a Cleveland guy for the correlation, but I'm not going to reach on Nick Chubb. Jerry Judy's gone, and Joku's obviously gone. Maybe Elijah Moore late, but again, this is a situation where I'm not going to force it. A Cleveland guy didn't necessarily fall to me, so I'm not going to force one there. Um, so lots of running backs here. What about the Dallas guys? NFC East fan. Zeke back for his 50th year in Dallas, and then Rico Dowdle, who's already been taken, it looks like. But do you have a preference either one of those guys? Is it an active avoid for you?
It's a pretty strong avoid, man. When you have a washed-up vet who they're going to force work to, and then an unproven younger guy who has never done anything, and I think the offensive line got worse there. I think Dallas is a worse team this year than they were last year, so I'm not super excited about either of those guys. And I think they kind of cannibalize each other. But if they fall super late, I have no problem with taking either one. But I'm definitely not taking them at ADP. It would have to be like a round behind.
That's fair. Let me ask you this. So Eckler's available. If I take Eckler now, is it a little bit past his ADP? But I would have Achane, Mixon, Harris, and Eckler. Would you feel comfortable with just 4 running backs, all 4 guys who have roles, 3 of which are starters?
I think if Eckler is your number 4, I would probably grab someone late. If there was
Okay.
someone, I wouldn't force it, but if there's someone decent that you could get late, like I would probably take Eckler here,
Okay.
and then I would,
Yeah.
hopefully add someone late.
Okay. And then not receiver. Do you like Brandon Cooks? I know you're down on Dallas's offense. Michael Wilson, or do we just go a different position here because receiver is pretty thin at this point in the draft?
Yeah, like I feel like McMillan is probably my top guy there, and I don't think you have to take him yet. So no, I'm only taking Cooks if I have Dak.
Okay, I'm gonna take Michael Wilson. I don't have much of him. Now I have 2 Arizona receivers, so let's see who Arizona matches up with in the playoffs. New England, Carolina, the Rams. Yes, fantastic offenses here in New England, Carolina. So these are guys. But this is kind of nice because Carolina's got some guys late. New England has tons of guys late, so you can get some backdoor correlation here with Arizona. Um, and maybe even like Drake May is my number two quarterback, or Bryce Young is my number two quarterback to get some Arizona playoff correlation. You mentioned quarterbacks that you like late. So who are those guys that you're clicking on if you need a late quarterback or you're waiting completely on the position?
I mean, I think the really low guys are all interesting, like Carr. You just mentioned Bryce Young, and I know yesterday on the stream, Chuck and Ken were kind of talking about maybe Carolina's being undervalued now, and I actually really like the late Carolina stack. If you can get like Leggett and Bryce Young, I think that's pretty interesting, man. I think Leggett looked really good in college. I'm interested to see what he can do in the pros. I think Thielen's pretty washed. And we'll see what Deontay Johnson does. He should be decent. I just think Bryce Young can only go up from last year, right? And he's
Yes.
basically free late in drafts. And then Minshew's fine. I mean, I think there's some concern maybe about a in-season QB change there. You never know, but I think definitely the upside is solid for Minshew, especially if you have any Las Vegas players, then adding Minshew late makes a lot of sense to me.
I like that too. And so if you take someone like Minshew, are you taking three quarterbacks just because of the possibility of him being benched?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I mean, if you have Mahomes, I could see maybe getting away with two. But if your first quarterback was in the mid to late range, then yeah, I would take three. But normally, I'm only trying to take two quarterbacks if possible. So
Yep.
it would be like a good quarterback in Minshew or two mid quarterbacks, um, or just getting aggressive and going like Goff and Carr or something.
Chris in the chat says first show in the history of best ball where anyone has called Derek Carr interesting. Give us the pro
Absolutely
Derek Carr
fair.
take.
I mean, I just think that if you start with some New Orleans players, if you have Shaheed, if you get Jawan Johnson and Carter late, like it's an easy late pack, and if you miss out, then he's going to be there. So like, I don't think he's great, but I think you get a decent floor out of him, and he's just a guy that he's not going to ever really give you a huge feeling, but you can pair him up with some of the guys you already like, and he's kind of like a backup option that is going to be there late, and everyone hates him. Um, and he's probably not going to get hurt, probably going to play the whole season. So he's a little bit safer than guys like Daniel Jones, who probably will get hurt. But I don't hate Daniel Jones either. Like, there's a lot of gross quarterbacks you can take, and you get a good bounce. I'm not like super high on Derek Carr in general, but it's more just a cost thing.
Well, here's the thing. I already have Shaheed on the roster. New Orleans plays Washington and Green Bay in the playoffs. I already have Austin Eckler and Dontavian Wick. So I think he actually fits this bill pretty well. And if I add Jawan Johnson as my
There you go.
second tight end, I have Kelsey and Jawan Johnson, both stacked with their quarterbacks. I actually think, despite Chris's negativity in the chat here, I actually think Derek Carr fits this build a ton.
Yeah, man, I think that makes a lot of sense. Like, I try to keep my options open in general. So, like, if I ended up getting Leggett, then I'd probably be more inclined to take
Yep.
Bryce Young. But if I didn't get Leggett, then I would just be like, all right, I'm going to wait on Derek Carr and try to stack him with Juwan Johnson.
That was my plan. I probably should have taken Leggett instead of Michael Wilson, and I would have gone that route, but Leggett obviously is taken now. So I think I'm gonna go the Derek Carr, Jawan Johnson route. I have them both queued up.
Makes
Ideally,
sense.
we want Jalen McMillan to fall here to this pick. You and I both like
Right.
him. Let's just add to the exposure. Um, let's see here. Do you like Dotson in Philly, or do you think a change of scenery is not going to do him any good?
I think he's a decent talent. He has a problem with dropping balls, and I think I don't know, like, it must be mental because he's like really talented and he has the ability to catch like 10 touchdowns given the opportunities, but I don't know, he seems to run very hot and cold. I was shocked that they made that move. I was high on Dotson last year, and obviously it was a letdown year for him. It's going to be hard. There's so many mouths to feed in Philly, but I definitely think as a late option, he's sort of interesting. But I'd be more interested in Dotson in lineups that have Hurts, so I'm not going out of my way to grab him, in this range. I don't mind Ray Davis. They're going to run a ton. I think that adding Ray Davis late is interesting. I like McMillan in this range. I'm taking those guys over Dotson every time.
Yeah, me too. Definitely taking them over Dotson. I'm only taking Dotson really is if I miss out on AJ Brown or Devonta with Jalen Hurts lineups. So I agree with you there. We're certainly on the same page, and love being on the same page. And again, just because you haven't done many drafts, right? It doesn't take that much time to get acclimated, and your experience is going to come into play pretty quickly. This is for anyone who plays fantasy football. I actually am going to take Ray Davis here, and I'm going to take McMillan. I'm going to take both of our boys here. So
Love it.
that'll give us the fifth running back. That'll give us the best receiver you can take in fantasy football this year on a team that needs receivers. So yeah, I love that. So now we're through 14 rounds. Mahomes, Kelsey. We're going to add Derek Carr and Jawan Johnson here in the next couple of rounds. 5 running backs, we're done there. And then we'll just end up with actually a 9 receiver build, which is pretty important, I think, for how we started this team, Jake. And I think for people out there who've been watching our shows, they probably know this, but if you're just starting to get into drafts, if you don't spend a lot of draft capital at one position, generally you want more players at that position to either give yourself more chances at hitting a home run or just give yourself more guys that can contribute on a weekly basis. So by having 9 receivers here on a position where we didn't spend a lot of draft capital there, I think it actually makes sense from a construction standpoint to do that.
Absolutely, man. I've been doing that in all the drafts I've been doing as well.
Any guys yet, and again, this is putting you on the spot, any guys that you haven't taken a lot of, you looked at your exposure, like, shit, I probably need some of that guy, and I haven't taken them much or at all yet. Any guys come to mind off the top of your head?
In this range or in general?
Just in general.
Man, there's a lot of guys that I've been avoiding. I'm like, man, if this guy pans out, like the Chase Brown, I have really not been getting any of, and I haven't been getting much Moss either, and that makes me really nervous, honestly.
Yeah, I think that's. I forget when we were talking about those mid-range running backs. That was on my list of teams to ask you about. I agree. I think they're. I don't know if league winner is the right term because that's a pretty strong term, but guys that are going to be pretty solid contributors. It's probably going to be Moss or Brown, and maybe it's both at different times of the year depending on injuries and whatnot. Brown obviously has ascended a little bit here in the last couple of weeks with how he was used in the preseason and all the comments coming from the coaching staff and the players. But it could be either one. We've seen both. We've seen at least Moss come in and be a great fantasy contributor when he gets to work, and Chase Brown obviously was productive on limited touches last year. So yeah, I would say, Jake, especially based on my exposures, if I'm right, which is not a guarantee by any means, but I would say yeah, try to get some of those guys here for the next couple of days.
I think my issue has been like I don't know which guy is going to be the guy, so I'm doing the fish move of being like when you can't pick one, you just go with neither,
Yeah.
which is definitely a problem. Like I should just be getting a decent amount of exposure to both, but there's just other guys I like around them that I feel more confident in. So it's hard to take the leap of faith in either one. But I've got a little bit. I haven't been getting none, but I started out getting a little bit of Moss, and then I was like, what if he's not the guy? Probably Chase Brown.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
we'll see, man.
if you
I
like
don't know.
Pollard so much and you're taking a lot of Pollard, I don't. I mean, obviously, I would take him over those guys too. So I mean, if you're taking stands with limited number of drafts, I don't mind just taking Pollard and not playing those guys because, it could very easily not pan out for either one of them, or they just pass 600 times.
Right. I mean, maybe they cannibalize each other and they're just super pass heavy and both guys are decent, but you don't have to have either one.
Chris brings up an interesting question in the chat here, and it was something I thought about very initially and then forgot about. But any interest in Justin Watson on Mahomes teams with Hollywood out? So obviously we only have Kelsey here. We're just throwing darts at receiver late to see what sticks. I don't mind some correlation. Do you have any thoughts on? And I think you and I had a discussion maybe yesterday or the day before about this was on Josh Allen teams. You miss out on Shakir or Curtis Samuel or Keon Coleman, or you just don't like those guys. Take like Mac Hollins in round 18. This is kind of a similar circumstance, Jake, where we missed out on those guys, but we could take Justin Watson, who we've seen catch touchdowns, has a rapport with Mahomes, and as a ninth receiver, could easily contribute 1 or 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, if you have Mahomes, I can understand doing it. I have 0% Watson, but I mean, he has like the long touchdown upsides. Just so often he's scoring, 0 or 1 point. I mean, he's not an exciting guy. Like I would rather have Mac Hollins late on an Allen lineup, just because right now aren't they listing Mac Hollins as a starter over Keon Coleman like on their
Mm-hmm.
actual depth chart, or am I crazy?
No, you're right. You're right. And Hollins basically only played with the starters, didn't play much in the preseason, unlike Keon Coleman. And Matt Collins has ruined many fantasy players' lives with his production at times for various teams. So, yeah, I agree with you there. If I'm stacking a wide receiver 4, or in Hollins' case, wide receiver 3, late with the elite quarterback, obviously, yes, I'd like Hollins with Allen over Watson over Mahomes. I guess the real question here is, especially for Mahomes teams, if we do think that it's Hollywood, Worthy, Rashi Rice, it's pretty much locked in. unlike the past couple of years where they've rotated a lot of receivers trying to find the guy, would you rather just take a non-Mahomes receiver that has upside late, like I don't know, let me think here, like
Like Corley.
yeah, like Corley or somebody, like yeah, any guy that you like in round 17 or 18, as opposed to trying to find a wide receiver 4 or 5 that correlates. I assume you'd rather just take the upside guy every time.
Yeah, I'm not like forcing a stack just because it's part of a stack, you know. Like that would be like more of it if they're close for me. I'm not gonna like just go crazy just to make sure I get correlated because yeah, Watson might not even see the field.
That's true. That is true. I'm not going to risk getting sniped on Derek Carr, which is a sentence I never thought I would say. So I'm just going to go back to back with Juwan Johnson and Derek Carr here. It's not like we're giving up too much. We're going to be taking darts at receivers here pretty shortly anyway. So between rounds
Yeah,
15 and round 17.
there's
So
enough late guys. Right. That makes sense.
cool. All right.
Who's left at quarterback right now?
Yeah. So at quarterback, we have Baker Mayfield, who we could pair um,
With McMillan.
with McMillan, which I do like. Let me see what Tampa Bay's playoff schedule is, so we can see if we have any other guys on the roster. Chargers, Dallas, Carolina, no. And I'm not saying Mayfield's definitely a better pick than Derek Carr, as his ADP indicates. But is he a better pick for this roster? Probably not. I really like the playoff correlation here with these guys. And when in doubt, even if the edge is a little bit in favor of one guy, I'm going to take the correlation all day because, Jake, as you know, we can't project as humans that accurately 4 months out from the end of the season. So,
Yeah, definitely, man. I feel like so many times I've tried to do that, it's backfired. I was only gonna say like the other option if Otten was still available, you could go on Mayfield and Otten as another correlation.
and they are available. So,
It's close. I can go either way. I mean, you have Shaheed though.
Oh, right. Yeah, well, all right, we'll go Derek Carr, just because you said he's an interesting player. So we'll go Derek Carr. I don't have much Derek Carr either. I have more Mayfield. So we'll go Derek Carr and Juwan Johnson. There we go. All right, now we're done at quarterback. We're done at tight ends. We are done at running back. So we're gonna finish these last 2 picks at receiver. Let's talk some high upside receivers here, Jake. I got them up here on screen. It may take a couple seconds for you to see. As you see them, or if you already have names on your list, guys around 17, 18, you're like, you know what? They're worth a dart throw.
Yeah, I mean, I think Yoshi, Corley, Malik Washington, I really like.
Love Malik Washington.
Let's see who else is there. Yeah, I mean, those are the guys. Those would be the top targets. And then if they get taken, I don't think Shark and Franklin are crazy.
Yep. Love those guys. Let's see.
What do you think about like Tyler Boyd? Like, how's his season gonna go?
It's a great question. They should run a. See, here's the thing though. You would think they'd run a lot of 3 wide receiver sets by signing him, but they're obsessed with 2 tight end sets, at least by reading between the lines in preseason and what the coaching staff is saying. Like they listed Chigakonko and Josh Wiley as co-starters at tight end. So like there's a chance that they run more 2 tight end sets than we would like. And Tyler Boyd is not on the field for 40-50% of the snaps, which again, that's not bad for a round 18 pick. 50% snaps for a guy who's been productive in the past. I guess it just depends on what you're looking for. He's a guy that's probably not going to get you zeros, but he's probably also not a guy who's ever going to finish top 20 at the position.
Yeah, right. He's not really a splash play guy. So if he's not going to be on the field all the time to get the volume, then I'm less excited about
him. Let's see here. Because there are a lot of interesting veterans too, right? Like guys who just signed. We talked about Noah Brown. Tim Patrick came over from Denver to Detroit. And everyone is drafting Khalif Raymond, which I think is probably fine for best ball. But if you listen to what Dan Campbell said, this was when I was grinding preseason DFS news for like 50 straight hours. And we were trying to figure out which Detroit receiver to play in preseason DFS. And they had all these guys that were battling for wide receiver 3. And one of the reporters was like, you got Khalif Raymond, like, isn't he your wide receiver 3? And he's like, yeah, he's a guy we want to use more on special teams, use him as a gadget role. We don't want to run Raymond out there for 50, 60 snaps. We want a big-bodied wide receiver 3 to step up and take the role. And that way we can put that whoever that is with Amon-Ra and Jameson Williams and run this offense how we want to run it, not with Khalif Raymond. None of those guys stepped up. They literally cut every single receiver. And he was like, all you guys suck. And so they just go out and signed Tim Patrick, who like fits to a T what they're looking for. So marrying those two together, I think a lot of people aren't going to pick Tim Patrick because he got cut by Denver. But I really like him now as a round 18 pick, just marrying what the coaching staff has said about what they're looking for out of that position.
You know what's funny is I was like super heavy on Detroit stacks early on, and I was also drafting a ton of Tim Patrick, thinking he was going to be like a starter in Denver. So it actually kind of backdoored my way into having Tim Patrick Detroit stacks. But
Look
I
at
was a
that.
little worried there when he got cut for like a day.
Dude, we all were. Yeah, I know. Chris said in Discord, he was like, I think we're gonna look at Tim Patrick as a DFS value in week 1, and then I don't even think an hour passed, and it was like, yeah, Denver cut Tim Patrick, and it's like, all right, well, maybe not in week 1 then. um,
I think I would probably go Malik Washington as my top option here, and if he gets taken, I would probably go Corley.
okay, you know what? Well, let me see here. We got 2 rookies. We got 3 rookies. Harrison, Odunze, McMillan. Feel great about all 3 of those, by the way. Hopkins, veteran, may miss the first week, may not. We'll see how slowly he gets out of the gate there. Wicks, we've talked about. Sheed, big play guy. Wilson, biggest question mark at this group. Probably the number 3 in that offense. Second-year player. Didn't do a ton last year. Um, but again, I'm not. Do we need a veteran here? Do we take 2 upside shots? If you're looking at this receiver room, Jake, do you feel okay with taking 2 shots at guys who maybe zeros most of the year, or do you want 1 veteran and 1 rookie or 1 upside guy to maximize how we build points each week with this roster?
I mean, I think you have enough players that I don't mind going just all upside. Um,
Cool.
but I can understand going either side. But I don't know, man. I think Malik Washington is gonna get a lot of work, and Jalen Waddle gets hurt every 10 minutes. So I think Malik Washington's super interesting.
Yeah, he may not miss any games, but he will miss multiple plays in a game, and that'll give us enough
Right.
enough snaps for Washington to contribute any given week. And electric dude. I think he fits exactly what this offense is looking for: speed, 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 and looked the part in preseason. So I agree. I was drafting a bunch of Malik earlier. I saw he's gotten a little bit of steam on Twitter from some analysts the past couple of days. So, but I agree. I'm going to take Malik here, and then I'll take your boy Malachi. I haven't taken much of Malachi Corley, so I'll take him here, and that'll even out my exposures a bit.
I haven't taken much either. I didn't really get excited about him until last night when I was watching his tape, and I was like, I need to get more exposure to this guy. He's actually good.
All right, well, I'll get some here for you, and then you can continue over the next couple of days getting some more Malachi. So, Jake, I appreciate you joining me. I know it wasn't an MMA week, and I know you haven't done a lot of studying. So, but true professional coming on here and talking for an hour about football. So, appreciate you, man. What are your plans here for the next couple of days with drafts, and then obviously with MMA returning next week?
Yeah, man, always a good time talking football. Yeah, just kind of juggling football and MMA at the moment, trying to get content together. And I'll probably just keep, doing best ball as long as the drafts are available. I think the marathon's pretty interesting, a little bit different strategy, where it's just total points and no playoffs. So I think you can take a little bit of a different strategy in that I've been kind of wrapping my brain around. So I kind of like that now that Best Ball Mania is filling up, going more the marathon angle and not looking at the weeks 15, 16 correlation and more just how can I get the maximum upside, maximum points to beat 100,000 people or whatever.
Yeah, I really like that. And I know Chuck has done some streams, and we'll probably, as Best Ball Mania fills, Chuck and the other guys on staff will do some streams here. We're going to be streaming every day, sometimes multiple times per day. So, again, make sure you subscribe to the channel. It's free to do so. We're doing a giveaway at 500 subscribers on this new Best Ball channel. So, do us a favor, click subscribe. Even if it's after the fact, you're watching this on replay, we appreciate you. Give us a thumbs up. And go follow Jake's work at DFS_MMA on Twitter and MMADFS.com, where you get all your UFC betting and your MMA DFS needs. So for Jake, I am Brian. Thanks to everyone for listening on this Saturday morning. Good luck and happy drafting over Labor Day weekend.